Welcome to the Get Fit Guys, quick and dirty tips to slim down and shape up. My name is Ben Greenfield, and I'm the Get Fit Guy. In this special Get Fit Guy episode, you're going to discover how 55-year-old triathlete Jim McIntosh used the same kind of advice you'll find jam-packed into my new book, Get Fit Guy's Guide to Achieve Your Ideal Body Type, to lose over 130 pounds in his health quest to lose weight and achieve his dreams. If you want to learn how to get fit for your body type and how to achieve your goals no matter who you are, what you weigh, or what kind of shape you're in, then this episode is for you. You'll also find more information about Jim's journey over at getfitguy.quickanddirtytips.com, where you can find the show notes for this episode. With me today on the call is a guy who I've gotten to know really well over the past few years. He first came to me a few years ago to talk pretty seriously about weight loss. And boy, have we come a long way since then, and he's now doing some pretty cool things. Jim McIntosh is his name. He's got a website over at ain'tdoneyet.net where you can check out some of his writing and some of the cool things that he's up to. Let's just go ahead and launch right in for folks and tell them where you were at. What was it, 4 years ago?
I think it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years ago, I certainly wasn't a very happy person. I'm 5'10", and I weighed about 340 pounds, and I was trying to lose weight. I was doing what I could physically, but I was just not getting anywhere. I wasn't even a hamster on the wheel. And I started looking for answers as why not. And of course, I turned to traditional medicine and the pop culture, what was being taught and out there, and it wasn't working.
Mm-hmm. What did you top out at for weight?
340 pounds.
What were the primary things that kind of got you up to that weight?
Well, when I did get diagnosed at that point in time, I finally did get to a doctor that actually did point toward the hypothyroidism. And I think that, well, I know, looking back, that I had been suffering from that for quite some time, perhaps maybe even all my life. Knowing in the past, when I was in the Marine Corps and such, and when I was wrestling in college and such, that I had to be running somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 miles a week to keep my weight under control back then.
So some people can kind of eat themselves into hypothyroidism by eating lots of inflammatory foods and things that they're allergic to that can tend to attack the thyroid tissue. And so in your case, this was a little bit more of almost like, something you'd experienced your whole life, something almost like genetic.
Well, yes, I believe that could be true. I might have been predisposed to that. However, I was basically eating a lot of, when I met you and we finally decided to go on an elimination diet and get rid of the wheat and dairy, that's when 100 pounds fell off and stayed off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty amazing how one simple change like that can cause this hormonal cascade in your body that causes that type of weight loss. Now, in that case, what inspired you to actually decide to make that change and to decide to lose weight?
Well, I've always been active and I've always been mentally to be able to overcome my excessive weight. Even at over 300 pounds, I made it up several mountains, one of which was Boundary Peak down in Nevada, which was about from the car. It was a day trip up and back, but it was, I want to think 6,000 or 7,000 feet of gain up to 13,700. So I've been able to mentally overcome, and I've always been active, but I looked around and there wasn't too many people my size doing what I was doing then, but there was even nobody doing it at age 60 and 70.
Right.
Just didn't see anybody my size that old with a smile on their face ever.
Mm-hmm. So did you feel like you were kind of headed down that road yourself?
Absolutely. And that wasn't the road for me. And that wasn't the one I chose. I chose to do. And I was clamoring for answers. And of course, the Marine in me just made me work harder and harder. And I kept going deeper and deeper into a hole as far as lack of recovery. And I started looking for answers anywhere I could. The thyroid issue was one of them, but getting rid of the weak, the protonics, the proton pump inhibitors went down the toilet the next day.
I'd never taken notes for heartburn.
Heartburn. I was diagnosed with GERD, irritable bowel syndrome. I don't know what else, but yes, and the doctor's sitting there telling me that I was going to take those for the rest of my life. That's what really, never mind, it's covered by insurance, and you'll be taking these the rest of your life. And that just didn't sit very good with me at all.
So you made those changes from a dietary standpoint in terms of where you were at to where you're at now. What are the major dietary modifications that you've made in addition to, you mentioned giving up the gluten and dropping that proton pump inhibitor, but what kind of other things have you found to make the biggest dent in terms of you being able to lose weight?
It's been a changing evolution. It hasn't been, there was one solution in the beginning. We can go back to that, and that will be my solution for the rest of my life. I did hit a plateau at about 100 pounds. I purposely slowed it up a bit, but I had been in the past been on Atkins diet and lost weight. As anybody who was motivated to lose weight, I've been on more than one diet, and they all work for a while. So I was familiar and very comfortable being on a high-fat, high-protein diet and dropping the grains. I'd actually done that before. My skin cleared up, allergies went away, such as it did this time too. But now I am moving more and more toward going ketogenic as a matter of lifestyle and staying either very close to it or in it all the time. For me, I am extremely sensitive to carbohydrates. I know that from being on Atkins on 2 other occasions. And I can't take much more than 20 or 30 grams of carbs a day or I'm out of ketosis. That's me.
And for people listening in who may not be familiar with ketosis per se, basically that's just being in that state of pure fatty acid utilization. And I know that this is something that we haven't yet mentioned to listeners, but for you specifically, that's kind of a different approach because you're training right now for Leadman. Well, we'll talk in a minute about the journey that you've made up till this point, but just real quick so people know, what are the distances you'll be competing in for this Leadman event that's coming up in a couple weeks here?
Leadman is a little bit different take. It's about an Ironman equivalent as far as effort. Some could argue a bit more. It starts off with a 5K swim versus a 3.8K swim.
And you've done Ironman as well.
Correct. Ironman Canada, year before last. I guess I'll never be able to do it again at that venue again. But oh well.
Yeah, because they canceled it, not because you couldn't.
Right.
So you've got a 5K swim coming up, and what else? What comes after that?
And that'll be up at a lake at about 4,000 feet of elevation. I live at sea level. And then the next will be a 223K bike with about 5,500 feet of climb. However, you're climbing up to twice up to 6,500 feet. So with the gain of 6,000 feet over where I live, that's going to be significant additional load on my aerobic system up there. And then they cut the run down to 22K, which is just over 13 miles. So it rounds out to a full 250 kilometers in a day.
And you're going to be doing that primarily in this state of fat utilization, which I know is quite unique. That's something that I've talked about on bengreenfieldfitness.com before, and I know, something that folks can go research a little bit more, the whole exercise in a low-carb state. But it's interesting that that's one of the things that's worked very well for you in terms of shedding weight and keeping yourself in that low-carb state. Now, backpedaling here for a second to 4 years ago, obviously you weren't thinking about doing an Ironman when you first walked in and met with me about making some changes to your lifestyle to shed some weight. What happened to you from an exercise standpoint? What did you start with, and what did you find worked for you, and what brought you into doing something as crazy as an Ironman?
Well, actually, Ben, the Ironman seed had been planted in my head before I walked in your office. That was there. Now, whether I could see myself doing it, yeah, I could. But it was going to be a long, hard journey, and I knew that. But we started off just bicycling because I had very fortunate over the years. I had good knees, good ankles, had no problems with that. And I really relished that resource. So we were largely on bicycling and started off with just a old stationary bike and worked with that. Then I lost that 100 pounds in about 6 months. And that started to concern me a little bit. So I did start eating a little bit more because I didn't want to lose too fast and get stones and other complications that I'd read about. So I splurged on myself, and I worked this way that I saw a nice new shiny Cervelo S2 Carbon in the store, and a pretty little lady talked me into buying it. After I do something like that, I'm enough Scottish in me that I'm going to go ahead and now I got to bring myself and my body up to being worthy of it and utilize it and try to wear it out as fast as I can. And I did that. Then we moved on to running. And when we started running, I went over to Kona actually and watched the World Championships that following fall. Got to see Chrissy Wellington break the course record there and see her third win. And Alexander's third win as well. And that was pretty cool. That pretty much cemented it. But one thing over there, too, I stopped by the Newton running booth and got talking to them and looked at what was going on. It wasn't just because Craig Alexander had that brand on his feet, but I looked at that and what it made sense to be putting up on the feet. And I hadn't really started doing a lot of running yet. I'd been strictly on real soft stuff. And in the past, when I'd wrestled, I got into shin splints. Anytime I gotten over running more than 6-7 miles a day, I shin splint city. Of course, I was running on concrete and asphalt and not strictly grass and slapping my feet. I was definitely a heel striker in that. So I had the opportunity, which a lot of folks don't, when I'm starting back into running, is to adopt the Chi or Kai or evolution running or whatever you want to call it, style of running to where you're up on your toes. That's what you do. And fortunately, with a couple little hiccups along the road, not very many, I've been able to run pretty much pain-free.
So in terms of basically completing this Ironman, losing all this weight after making the exercise and dietary modifications that you've made, and getting as far as you've gotten so far with this journey, what have you found to be your biggest barriers or your biggest frustrations when it comes to being as overweight as you were and getting to where you are right now and then looking forward at where you want to be?
Well, the biggest barriers is that there is so much, Ben, out there trying to get your attention and money. I'm not the only person in this boat. There are literally millions of Americans in this boat. Not necessarily millions that are as motivated as I am to make changes, but there's a lot. And there's whole industries and fallacies out there. So there's my point is there's a lot of snake oil out there. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't work or is working against this other. If you're doing this, you don't want to be doing that. And what has enabled me to overcome much of that is quite frankly, your guidance and the guidance that I've gotten off your podcasts. And there's probably more than one way to skin a cat, but on the other hand, you can't be working against yourself all the time. And I would encourage anybody to get a knowledgeable coach, not a guy who's a jock himself, but actually studies the material and is somewhat familiar with the nutrition and the physiology end of it as well, especially in my kind of position. Now, on top of that, I've been a shift worker with working 12-hour shifts, which has added even more complexity to scheduling the workouts, what kind of workouts I can do. And that's where making the commitment to a coach and committing your resources. I'm not a rich man, but the thing is, if I throw that commitment out there, then I will fulfill it. That's just not in the cards not to. That's why I finished Ironman, and I've only not finished one race, and that's because I literally twisted my crank off my bike.
Yeah, I remember that. You couldn't. You physically couldn't do it. It's interesting to hear about some of the barriers that you've had to overcome. If there was one thing that, if you could tell people the one thing that you wish you'd known when you first started your weight loss journey, what do you think it would be?
I wish I would have known 30 years ago what I know now. I mean, everybody does. But the thing is, that information wasn't out there 30 years ago. So right now, I would say get a coach. And if the coach doesn't click with you, don't burn any bridges. Just go see somebody else or referrals and stick with it. Have some faith in yourself and just be unrelenting in accepting failure.
You've got this lead man coming up, Jim, and you've also got a website in which you're keeping a tally on what it is that you're up to, but also providing people who are in your shoes. Specifically, I know one of the audiences that you're targeting are older individuals who want to lose weight, who feel like they aren't ready to give up on life and throw their hands up yet. So you've got this ain'tdoneyet.net. Tell me a little bit about what that is and where you're going with that.
That is a bit of a way of holding myself accountable to some degree. That's part of that. I throw something out there, and now I've got to fulfill it. I registered for this race, and it's raining outside, and I'm tired, and I'm sore a little bit, and I don't want, I better get out there and do it. There's those days. But I do want to get the information out there and get people thinking and get them to take charge of themselves and their health. No matter how much you love and trust and been to this doctor that you've been going to for the last 30 years, 5 years, or whatever, that person really does not have 100% your personal best interest at heart. I'm sorry to break everybody's bubble on that. They're nice people. They want to help people, but you have to take charge of your own life and your own health care and dive into it yourself and get your own information. And so you can talk to them on that level. When they're spouting the old 1964 line, you just have to say thank you and walk away and go find another doc. It's not all shopping about just trying to find people that are agreeing with you, but say, well, why do you say that? And have them explain it or give you the books and say, it's these studies right here, and here's a study. I give you the referrals, and away you go. Recently, the one problem I had with my knee is happened to be by this cold laser and talked to this lady about it a little more. You've had some information on your show about that and prolotherapy and such, but I would have never in a million years had believed what that cold laser did for my knee. It was truly quite remarkable, and it was at the cost, paying it out of my own pocket, of $35 a treatment. And that is a copay. There's other things that I've done. I did establish a savings account that I'm able to put pre-tax money in and use that for health care that I choose. That's, of course, allowable under IRS rules. So taking charge of your health care in both the delivery and the financial end of it is something that someone says, well, I can't do that. Well, that's not in my vocabulary. I started the website, and matter of fact, my next article coming up will be talking about those FSA accounts or HCFSA accounts that are available to folks.
That's what I like, is that you're getting that information out there that's just practical stuff, that where people don't have to make the same mistakes or have to go through the learning process. You're kind of just relaying what it is that you're doing and what works, and I like it. So Jim's website is ain'tdoneyet.net. He's had quite the journey so far, and I'm excited to see him race lead man and see what's to come for this next year. So Jim, thanks for sharing today.
You bet. And thank you very much, Ben, for your podcast. It's all there. If you listen to episode 1 and work your way to 209 or so now, all the information's there, folks.
Well, that's going to wrap up today's special episode of the Get Fit Guy. And if you have more questions about my interview with Jim, or you want to know more about how to get fit for your body type and how to achieve your goals, no matter who you are, what you weigh, or what kind of shape you're in, then join the conversation over at facebook.com/getfitguy. And until next time, this is the Get Fit Guy asking you, what are you waiting for? Go get fit.